All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Chapiga, the Network Solutions Architect with A3 Communications. We appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. We have two speakers today from Aruba Networks to talk about several topics that are relevant to the challenges we face with opening schools in the midst of a pandemic. First, we have Peter Kaplan, who is the Aruba National ERate Channel Manager. Before Aruba, Peter worked at Funds for Learning for 18 years. For those of you who don't know, Funds for Learning is an ERate compliance firm that helps clients navigate the pitfalls of ERate. Next, we'll have David Dunlap, who is the Aruba sales engineer for channels in this region. He has an extensive background in networking across the board and works with partners like A3 to help us support you. After the presentation, we'll have a question and answer period. To allow for questions at the end, we are not muting the attendees. Please mute yourself during the presentation. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to David. David?
To Peter.
Oh, thanks,
Yeah.
Jason. Sure. Peter
Sorry,
Kaplan. No worries. Peter Kaplan here, the Aruba ERate channel manager. And actually, I want to start by thanking the educators. You are in a no-win situation in many ways. I think it's a laudable goal. The Trump administration is encouraging and pushing schools to open up, and it's a laudable goal. I think we all can agree that our students, they really do best when they're on campus and they have daily interaction with their teachers, and they have the social interaction with their friends. There may be school districts that will be able to go full time. Many and most will not right away. But school districts really are in a no-win situation with what is happening across the United States with where COVID is right now. So I just want to start out by thanking you. There are some long-term challenges and clearly some immediate needs. This past spring, I was very impressed with how quickly the K-12 community literally changed to distance learning, on a dime, literally within days. The whole country shut down, school districts stopped having students on campus, and within days, there was some semblance of remote learning, and everyone was just doing the best they can. There were, a lot of challenges, with that. The Los Angeles Unified School District, one of the largest school districts in the country, they were actually, very vocal in public about some of their challenges, and they specifically stated in March that literally half of their students did not have any devices, at home, and a quarter of their families did not have any connectivity, and just, amazing challenges to overcome, even under the best circumstances. I have 3 school-age children, 2 now, one in middle school, 2 in high school. Both my wife and I are home working. We have devices, we have connectivity. We don't have an essential worker at the house, but even with all the advantages that we had, remote learning was still a tremendous challenge for all of us in the spring. And again, I think the school districts were just doing the best they can. What is now known as the homework gap has always been the digital divide and digital equity. For the last 15, 20 years, we heard about the digital divide, that we need to figure out how to solve it, and there are the haves and the have-nots, and it affected urban communities and rural communities, now school districts are being asked to solve this issue, unfortunately with little resources, and now it's called the homework gap. And the Consortium for School Networking They are a K-12 association for CIOs and technology directors and technology coordinators. And every year they release a survey of their members. And every year, cybersecurity, network security is the #1 issue that school districts face. And this year, that actually was the #2, the second issue, the second top issue. The first issue in terms of the release of the survey was solving the digital equity problem, ensuring that there were enough devices and connectivity at school districts was the #1 issue that COSN was reporting that their members were facing. #2 was cybersecurity. In terms of network security, cybersecurity, the FBI released actually 2 pins over the last couple of months. Private industry notifications is what they're called. Back in March and then in June, where they issued these private industry notifications to K-12 school districts that there was a surge in cybersecurity attacks, particularly ransomware. And a lot of that was due to remote learning, whether it was the Zoom bombing that we've all heard about, whether it was educators that were maybe connected to to the school network and clicked on a link, or they received an email and they clicked on a link that they shouldn't have, and all of a sudden you have these attacks on from these cybersecurity professionals getting healthcare, health information, medical records, financial records, what are the salaries of employees, and it continues to be a major problem. The K-12 Cybersecurity Resource Center, they actually track, this is over the last several years, they've been tracking the number of cybersecurity incidents at school districts. And this is, they were reporting this as of May, that literally every couple of days there were cybersecurity incidents at K-12 school districts. So this is definitely, has been top of mind for many years, and this is just a continuing source of frustrations for network administrators to solve and make sure their IT networks are secure. Every state department of education has released guidance to school districts, how to open up safely. And every state department of education has either recommended or required that school districts have some method, some policies for contact tracing. Now, they don't specifically mention whether or not it needs to be a technology or not, but it is something that school districts need to think about. If an educator unfortunately gets struck with COVID-19, how are you going to notify the community, or are you supposed to notify the community? What kind of HIPAA policies do you have that would address who you're supposed to contact? Is it the local health official? Who has that data at a particular school district? And there are technologies that actually can help with this particular issue. For example, if you are a current Aruba customer and have the Aruba architecture, where you have access points and you have Airwave and Central, we actually can extract that location data. So the APs will track where those phones are in a particular school building. And we can see, with a 10-meter radius, where are, what other phones have that phone been in contact with, and it'll makes it a little easier to determine, for that contacting and tracing policies, who else was in contact with that particular individual, or where in the particular school building were they, and you can concentrate, cleaning, cleansing, the disinfecting, of that particular area, if you know exactly where they've been within the building. So these are just a few things to think about. And the CDC, I think we're all aware that they've released considerations for K-12 administrators, and they too have mentioned that contact tracing is an effective disease control strategy. So whether or not you ultimately decide to use technology or not, it is something that you clearly need to think about what policies, who has access to the information, as that may occur. As I mentioned, every school, every state Department of Education has released guidance, and how their institutions, how their K-12 schools should open up safely, how should they communicate, various safety issues to the community. And these are just a few. Each state has a little bit of a different focus. If you go to the North Carolina State Department of Education website, you'll see that they have a way to move forward called their Lighting Our Way Forward. The South Carolina Department of Education, they had a task force, and they've released it's about 70 pages worth of really good information called Accelerated Task Force. And they have gets really good information how school districts in South Carolina can open up safely. And Georgia has something similar, but they have, it's called Path to Recovery for our K-12 schools. Now, in terms of funding, it seems like a lifetime ago at this point. About 2.5, 3 months ago, Congress passed the CARES Act. It was about $2 trillion worth of stimulus package, and it actually did include about $30 billion for education, about $14.5 billion for higher ed, $13.5 billion for K-12. And our message over these last several months for K-12 IT directors really has been simple, that it's important to be an advocate for technology, that every business unit within a school district, and rightly so, is going to have their hand out, for those critical funds, whether it's to disinfect the school buildings, whether it's to purchase mobile hotspots or get connectivity or anything in between. The CARES Act has been, it's very flexible for how school districts can utilize those dollars. Now, the dollars have been flowing through the U.S. Department of Education through Title I. So we are recommending that that not only do IT directors need to be an advocate, they need to talk to their Title I coordinator about why it's important for for some of these dollars to be allocated for technology, either for mobile hotspots, for additional connectivity. But it's all these dollars are being very high profile, and it's important to talk to your superintendent or the school board, as well. Now, many states have already started their sub-grant process. There have been some states where the deadlines have already passed. Some states have not started that process yet, where there's still the sub-grant process, where the state departments of education are still finalizing the sub-grant process, where the LEAs, the school districts, will apply to get those critical dollars. And we have seen that it is unfortunate that too many people have been unemployed during this time, and state and local tax revenues are completely slashed, and school districts certainly are not going to be immune to losing revenue. And what we've seen is, while most school districts are still plan on going forward with their ERate funding for 2020, because they understand that IT networks are completely mission critical, right? Whether or not the students are on campus or off campus, it's still mission critical. And but it is unfortunate where there are some school districts that want to go forward with their ERate projects, but don't have the revenue for their non-discounted portion anymore. We've actually seen that school districts have utilized CARES to pay their non-discounted portion. So between CARES and ERate, they've gotten their entire networking paid for, which has been really a wonderful way for the CARES Act to be utilized. Now, there is some additional funding coming down the federal legislation pike. This is just a very new news. Just a couple of days ago, the Republicans released their stimulus package for the next round of negotiations, and it's about $1 trillion package and $105 billion for K-12. And their proposal is for most of those funds to go through the Department of Education through Title I, very similar to CARES. And I think that there's some advantages to that because the states they're just have gone through that process with the first round of CARES, and maybe they can update their subgrant process, or it wouldn't take them very long to do another round of applications. Now the Democrats have released about $3 trillion in the next round of stimulus, and they too have literally tens of billions of dollars going for K-12. Now the Democrats, they prefer to have a dedicated funds for distance learning, and they actually have that in their HEROES legislation, which passed the House of Representatives, $5 billion for distance learning that would flow through the Federal Communications Commission. It wouldn't be part of the ERate program per se, but a one-time connectivity fund. Now, the Democrats have passed some broadband legislation, some infrastructure package that also includes some dedicated funds and billions of dollars for distance learning. So, I am confident that when the Republicans and Democrats do pass their next version of the stimulus package, that there will be tens of billions of dollars, a lot more than that $13.5 billion that was passed for the CARES Act. There'll be a lot more for K-12, and technology will be a very important aspect of that. In terms of the ERate process, I actually borrowed this these steps from USAC, and just again conceptually, I think we all sort of understand the overall process where typically in the fall there's the competitive bidding. The schools will post a Form 470 to the USAC website. The FCC, Federal Communications Commission, they set the overall policy for the ERate program. Under the FCC is USAC, the Universal Service Administrative Company. And school districts will post their Form 470 to the USAC's website. At a minimum, they have to wait 28 days, evaluate all bids, price needs to be weighted the most, and then they can enter into a contract with their service provider. The FCC and USAC open up their 471 applications. Typically that will open up early to mid January, close sometime in March. This past year we know it was extended. And the 471 process is where schools literally will apply for the funds. How much money do they need? Which service providers won the bid? What their school lunch numbers are. They describe that project. And then there's a very strict review process. The USAC wants to confirm that there was an open, fair, competitive bidding process, that the school has enough money in their budget to pay the non-discounted portion, that the projects were eligible at eligible locations. And that process can take anywhere from 2 months to 16 months, depending on the size and complexity of the application. How responsive, are the school districts to, those questions from USAC? There are times where schools will, their administrators are on break during the summer, and they will go on summer deferral. And when that's the case, then USAC will just pick up those applications in September. So there are a lot of factors that will determine how quickly you receive a funding commitment decision letter. Of course, then the project can start once you receive the funding commitment decision letter. Schools need to file the Form 486 to alert USAC that the project has started. The service providers need to file their SPAC, their annual certification. And of course, then the projects can go forward. So conceptually, the process is not that difficult. Of course, there are, the devil are, in the details, and we can answer your questions if you have any after the fact. In 2020, USAC they actually released their first funding wave. They released quicker, and more dollars, than they ever have. And overall, they've committed, a little over $1 billion, which is about, a third of the overall dollars that they've committed. Now they have, they're on track to commit, 90+% of the applications, the workable applications by September 1st, which is the use that the FCC has, per FCC regulations, they're supposed to commit all workable applications by September 1st. The issue is that USAC typically will start with those smaller to medium-sized applications first, and those larger school districts or those more complex applications will follow those. But it is important to be an advocate, and if you have not heard from your USAC reviewer in a while, I would reach out to them, be proactive, and ask if there's anything else they need to make those determinations. The FCC has, they relaxed the GIFT regulations until September 30th, 2020, so recognizing that technology providers are in a unique position to provide, donations to school districts in this critical time. It's my recommendation that if you accept donations from a service provider, that you document what you're getting, from whom, that won't be tied to any future procurement. We do know the FCC will spend some resources auditing during this time frame. The FCC started, they have released the new Form 470, for this year. There were no changes, for this particular year, for 2021. Now, it is exciting that in FY 2021 that every school district in the country is going to have a new Category 2, 5-year budget, right? Which is great, and school districts will have more flexibility than they ever have in the past. So the way that the rules had been set in 2015, if you have 50 school sites, that means you had 50 Category 2 budgets. And those budgets could not be moved from one school to another. So if you had a newer school that maybe did not need as much infrastructure, and you're an older school that maybe needed a lot more of your time and resources, the way the ERate rules worked, where we're not able to shift those budgets from one site to another. And unfortunately, there were millions of dollars that just went wasted in any given year because of that, really that red tape. And the FCC just back in December, these new rules will, starting in 2021, you'll have that flexibility of where you want to, or where those dollars should be, allocated. It won't be those budget, that site by site, anymore. You also have more dollars than you had before. It's be $167 per student for the next 5 years, which is also an increase from the last cycle. The equipment transfer rules will be eliminated in 2021 and beyond. However, if you purchased equipment in FY 2020 or previous, you still would need to wait a 3-year period before you can move that equipment, because you purchased that equipment in those time frame where the transfer rules were still in effect. So again, there are no changes to the Form 470. The FCC released their draft eligible services list. There are no substantive changes going forward. If you want to have comments, you can submit comments by August 20th. I think many of us actually were a little disappointed that there are no changes. We've been advocating to the FCC for many years that network security, for example, is a critical component of any IT network. And I think we were hoping that the FCC would include advanced network security as part of the eligible services list. I suspect that there will still be many comments, urging the FCC to change their mind and include network security in 2021. I don't think that that's going to happen. Lastly, this is a topic that is coming up more and more. And while USAC rules really do not address, gray market, and what is gray market, right? That's the definition is goods being sold outside of the manufacturer's distribution channel. So, there are, times where a partner or a vendor may have gotten manufacturer's equipment. Maybe they, some businesses in the area had went under, and they were able to get some used equipment from outside sources. And they actually, per ERate regulations, they can sell those used equipment to school districts. And there are challenges from a manufacturer perspective, because if a partner does not go through our normal distribution process, we don't know where the equipment came from, what shape it is by the time it arrives. Is it new? Is it refurbished? So manufacturers will not generally provide warranty or post-sale support or maintenance on those products where the partner did not go through their distribution. So again, this is just something to think about, as you're doing you're going through your procurement for 2021. If you want to ensure that you're going to get that warranty and post-sale support from, this is not just for Aruba, for any manufacturer, that on your Form 470 or RFP, you can specifically state that any vendor that responds needs to provide documentation that they're an authorized ERate partner of the manufacturer. Again, that doesn't need to be for Aruba; it could be for really any manufacturer, and that alone will help solve this problem. And we've seen many school districts on their Form 470s that have also stated that they're only going to accept responses with new equipment. So those are just a couple of options to think about. And I think in the time of COVID-19, where many, even more businesses have gone under, and they're going to try to get rid of their equipment, this could be even more of an issue in 2021 than 2020. So again, just something to think about. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and we'll pass this on to David. Thank you.
Good afternoon or good morning, guys. We've talked about the ERate and all that side of it. We're going to talk a little bit about the technical overview about how Aruba is kind of addressing or talking to the market, okay? And some of the things we're seeing, okay? So we're all kind of seeing the world that we live in. Everybody see my screen okay? No issues? They have the biggest thing to remember and stuff is when we're dealing with it is the way the networks have changed. The revolution of experience from the IT side, from the student side, the devices that we have, and we're trying to understand what Aruba does is bridging that physical devices to the digital devices and then letting them be secure on the network and understanding that. And experience the edge where all the action takes place now, right? Where people work, where we learn. When you see a kid walking around, it's in kindergarten with 2 iPhones, an iPad, and a MacBook Pro, in his diaper bag. These are things that we're seeing, and we're kind of understanding the experience has kind of changed. We all blame Wi-Fi as the issue, but there's other things involved in the issues and stuff. So we want to make sure we're delivering that smart digital experience, blending mobile, cloud, IoT technologies, and deliver that amazing experience to the edge, to the end users, so they don't have the complaint. They say, hey, it works great. I don't have any issues or problems. And these are some of the customers we've worked with in the past, and references that we can kind of say these are school districts or higher ed customers that are kind of using us. But education is the top of mind when we start looking at it. The digital learning, school safety, student success, smart digital spaces, understanding the cafeteria, the outdoor space, understanding cybersecurity, the pure amount of growth of IoT devices as we start building new buildings or bring in new devices, or I want the ability to be able to do this thing, pervasive Wi-Fi everywhere on the campus, or even off campus with the now digital learning, is how do we expand that beyond the ability of just in the building? We're doing remote workers. We're saying, how do we light up the buses? How do we light up the parking lot? How do I change my thinking or thought process of beyond just the doors, looking outside of our space? So you can imagine a campus, right? Users are the type of focus that we're doing. We're doing in learning environments, eliminate lost learning time, right? Network being down or having issues. They're doing digital learning, they're doing the video learning, they're doing different things and stuff, improving the campus safeties. So we must architect our experience to work edge in now. We don't look at it from core out. We start looking at the edge. How do we improve that? And then can we just start thinking about how do we look at the experience with less people? The learning experience talks about the different empowerment, right? The students and teachers, they want to work anywhere, anytime, any device learning. They want to be able to say reliable access to these cloud applications, Google, Office, whatever we're dealing with, right? More student-to-student collaboration on teams and learning and stuff like that. We want to make sure it works in all the classrooms, not specific areas. They could be in the hallway and pull their phone up and pull up a project they're working on and discuss it with another student. The administration needs to understand new initiatives and new mandates that we're having, and then also improve the safety and how do we get access but keep it safe and keep the students from going to places they shouldn't or looking at things they shouldn't. So some of the challenges we're facing, right? There's numerous challenges we're dealing with. Pure device growth, the growth of mobile and IoT devices, the amount of devices that we're putting on the network that facilities is bringing us and saying, oh, it's IT, so you got to support it now. Our IT staff has been cut over the years. Our funding has been cut. Our innovations that we're starting to do, professional development, staffing, all these things are getting more, but our funding and IT staff is going down. So we need to do more with less. We start looking at network security from a perspective of, in 2018, there was 122 publicly disclosed cybersecurity incidents. That's publicly. You've got to figure that number. It's got to be twice, maybe 3 times the amount of schools that were affected. With statistics like this in question, you need to ask, what are my vulnerabilities? Might students or teachers be facing, bringing it from the inside, or is it just external that I'm getting my threats from? Where are my attacks? So we look at it and say, can your network be flexible, not only with connectivity, but also security and user experience? How easy it is for them to put their own devices on and not have any IT involvement? How secure is that device from talking to other resources, things they shouldn't see or get to? How is secure from each other? How fast can we crush an attack going on? So we start looking at architecture that needs to be flexible. It needs to deliver experience that meets the educator needs. So what network the network should work for you, right? It should give you not just connectivity, it should go beyond that. It should get ahead of the issues, providing some intelligence and automation. So we start looking at our architecture, we start talking Aruba and stuff. It's not only the way that we start solid infrastructure, wired, wireless, WLAN, But we also talk about software for management, security, location, analytics. That's very important to understand, hey, how's my management going? What's my operations? Also allowing you to integrate with your partners. You've got dedicated Palo Alto, whatever thing you have, those third-party solutions that you already have and invested in, is the ability to open up the APIs and be able to pull or push that data to those things as needed, and to be able to scale this as you go into the ability to say, hey, it's a small project. It's like, I cannot have you guys come in and do a forklift rip and replace. That's going to be too much. I need to slowly think this process out so we don't have that rip and replace mentality. We start looking at it from the perspective of, let us be a partner and look at your growth plans, that 5 to 10-year plan. Not today, not tomorrow. What's happening down the road? Where do you want to get to? Our solution, okay, and not only been wired and wireless for years, but our security products, the ClearPass, securing those IoT devices, securing the guest access. Are you within compliance? Supporting remote workers, remote campuses without IT staff being there, cloud-enabled IT operations, optimization, ensuring that you always have learning, analytics, insurance. Tell me what's healthy, what's not, and show me how to fix these things. And understanding some wayfinding in some of the campuses. How do I get from here to there? How do I understand the COVID response? How do I understand I've got too many students in this part of the building, this area? I can look at these analytics and understand this information from the perspective of devices, because students always have them in their pockets, so we can look at that. And then also the analytics or machine learning. We start making it simple, right? It plays a big role in augmenting the IT by helping automate things, right? Give me config changes with minimal IT side. Tell me what's my issues. Proactively tell me, how's my user experience? Identify any anomalies, correlate that with references to my network performance, and then make me some recommendations about what is happening and what's going on. So self-optimizing network, right, the better experience, understanding the air match, the power, the channel, the width, what's going on, how many APs can I see, what's the difference, client match, so what kind of device, is it going in the front of the line, is it going to the back, location aware, understanding where it's connected to, and what's the best AP for that device to be connected to, and then start grouping AX clients together, start putting them at the front of the line so we can get them on and off, and start using the technology that we've gotten built over the years for the end users in IT to have a better experience. So we start talking green APs now, energy savings. That's great, Dave. I look at my budget, and one of the ways I can help my budget is start having APs go down when the school's empty. If there's nobody in that part of the building using the Wi-Fi, have the AP automatically understand the environment and start powering itself down and start taking advantage of the features and functionalities of these new APs that we've developed. We start looking at dynamic segmentation, right? Simplifying IT from a transport. We can look at the transport, the identity, and the attributes, context-aware policies. But then we can do dynamic enforcement. We can start looking at downloadable user roles, firewall rules, QoS, power, speed. We can start saying which pipe do we want to send that traffic out. And it's powered by the ecosystem that we have, the ability to start working with multimedia, location, security, and IoT vendors that are out there. So we work with a huge amount of ecosystem partners to make sure we're giving them the right information or pulling their information to get the outcomes that you desire. We start delivering that, through Wi-Fi and apps that just work, right? IT should be able to deliver on the user expectations. User expectations now is like it has to work. Has to be a campus network that is secure. It's make it better with leaner IT staff, zero provisioning. I just want to be able to plug and play, plug it into my system and be able to look at it. So Arubas Architecture, we've been over 16 years now, right? We started off as a firewall company that did Wi-Fi. We've grown into other things, including our parent company, HP Enterprise, purchasing us 4 years ago now almost, and growing that practice and experience and introducing a new wired network capability from what we call OCX product line, that we're able to go in from the core to the access layer and have a common operating system that I can sit there and make changes. I can look at commitments and test that before I make the commitment. Start looking at the WAN as we start thinking about breaking up schools, or we start breaking up buildings, or we start just moving the staff out and about, and then dealing with the IoT architecture from user's perspective. So we're always adaptable. You know, it's built to last. Mobile first, right? Inherently secure, but understand what it is. Unified policies on wired and wireless. Give me some analytics, machine learning to understand how I can adjust my network. Tell me what some possible resolutions or changes I can make from what you've learned or what you see inside my network. Be flexible, that multi-vendor approach, that API-friendly ability, right? No infrastructure rich and replace, longevity. And having worked with A3 in the past, you know, I always tell every person or every customer, have you read the Gartner Reports? Have you looked at what's out there as far as critical capabilities? What's the understanding? Aruba's approach has always been to validate from different people that are independent, that can give you our weaknesses and strengths. And you can kind of see, we're proud to receive this validation, that we're always been listed in the leaders reports. We're always one of the top 2 vendors out there, okay? We're number 1 in 5 of the 6 Gartner reports. And the one thing that I'm going to leave you guys with and stuff like that is that customer first, customer last thought process. We take this to market as a thought process, working with our partners, working with our ecosystem partners, working with our field teams. It's our core belief at Aruba, customer first, customer last. That means together with our partners, we innovate for our customers. Everything we do starts and ends with you guys, okay? So I threw a lot of information out to you technically about different pieces and stuff. I wanted to make sure you guys knew to invite the A3 engineering team in support of our field team to come in and talk to you about what can you do to help me? What can we do as a partner with you to start giving you the right pieces of the pie to make you start down the path and understand what do you need to do and stuff. I want to leave it this time to open it up to questions. Jason had a couple of them that were posted in the chat. And if you want to, you can post some other questions in the chat, ask any questions. We will take live questions. That's why we asked you to mute yourself at the beginning of the call. So feel free to unmute yourself, just cough, get somebody's attention, and feel free to ask any questions to myself or any other presenter on the call. That's all I had, guys.
Okay, thanks,
Jason,
David.
I'm turning it over to you.
All right. So I don't see anything in chat right now. Does anybody have any questions that you want to unmute? I've got a few that were sent through, I think, previously, but I wanted to give everybody a chance to speak up if you had any questions. Just need to unmute yourself. All right. Well, here's a couple of things that look like they're ERate centric. So Peter, I think I'll throw this one over to you. So from an applicant perspective, what's the advantage of going through the SPI versus VAR invoicing method?
Sure, that's a common question. There are 2 ways that a school district can get paid or reimbursed through the ERate program. They can get discounted invoices. If they do not have enough enough budget to pay the entire thing up front, then they'll ask their service providers, just send me a discounted invoice, and it'll be up to the service provider to get reimbursed. And we see many of the the category 2 projects would fall under the SPI, where the service provider provides the discounted invoice and they seek the reimbursement. However, we have seen that strong IT directors are able to talk with their school districts about budgeting the entire portion of the ERate project up front. And they pay their service providers through the BEAR process. They'll pay their service provider literally 100% of the project, right? And then the reimbursement of the ERate when they file their reimbursement form, the Form 472, that reimbursement funds then can actually be utilized for anything. So it can the intent of the ERate program originally was to leverage the ERate program for additional technology spending. So those technology directors that are able to have the budget to pay for the ERate up front, to get reimbursed, and then that reimbursement can be spent on ineligible ERate items such as ClearPass and items that the ERate does not support, technologies that the ERate does not support. So that is an advantage that if a technology director is able to secure the budget from their school board, that then they can recoup the ERate funds for additional technology spending.
Okay, great. Here's another one that actually it looks like it's very appropriate to the times right now, but it says, what are you recommending for districts that might not have their non-discounted portion anymore in order to fulfill their FY 2020 ERate projects?
Yeah, there are two things that I would recommend. For starters, we have seen that many school districts have turned to these federal stimulus dollars. That anything COVID-19 related. So if they lost some revenue tied to COVID-19, they can utilize that CARES funding to pay their non-discounted portion. That's certainly a very successful way to pay their non-discounted portion. Now, instead of not doing the project, if your CARES have already been spent and you don't have the non-discounted portion, I would just wait. Because again, Congress is going to be allocating literally tens of billions of dollars to K-12 over the next couple of months. The stimulus package will get passed, and it is highly likely that there will be a similar mechanism for school districts to have flexibility. It won't be that prescriptive. They'll have flexibility of how to utilize those dollars, and it is highly likely that in the next round of stimulus dollars, you will also be able to utilize that for the non-discounted portion of your ERate project.
Great. All right. Another ERate one here. Do you see the FCC releasing any additional major regulations this year? So,
the good news is I do not. I think we're going to have a normal year. I think that's, we need to, kind of go back to that. Last year, the FCC released their Category 2 rules in December. There was in school districts, rightly so, waited until those rules were released before they started their procurement. And of course, COVID hit, and it was just a lot of confusion this past year. So I do not anticipate there will be anything new coming down the pike. The FCC released the eligible services list, regular time. So I do think that this fall there will be a return to normalcy when it comes to the ERate and timeframes for posting Form 470s and getting those 471s out the door.
Okay, great. Here's one that I wanted to bring up, and David, this is one's for you. I know a lot with the students may or may not be in classes, or they may be in school just certain days of the week and have a lot of remote learning. There's a big push to make sure that they have connectivity, and some of them don't have it at home. So I know that some schools are looking for, outdoor wireless and things like that in order to give students the ability to come to the school, even though they're not coming into the school, in order to get some form of access, in order to download their homework, upload their homework, and those kind of things. Can you talk about some recommendations around that?
Yeah, there was a big project we had a while back to light up the parking lots of the school. They're like, I got good Wi-Fi, but it doesn't really extend out to my parking lot with the outdoor APs, simply just tying them into the network. And it can be totally independent. dependent. This is a totally separate infrastructure piece that we can just add and extend. We did a lot of donations from Aruba side, the projects that we sat down with them and said, hey, we'll help you out with the Wi-Fi. We'll put a couple outdoor APs up. We handled density. We had one school that had almost 85 cars in the parking lot waiting for us to turn it on and plug it in. The first day I plugged one in, and took us just a few minutes to configure and stand up. They were looking to extend the buses. They were doing the Cradlepoint, 4G, 3G. The service providers were bringing in anything they could get their hands on near the bus, a cable modem, DSL, some kind of connection into it to allow us to light it up and say, give hot zones as we start doing this interactive learning. Remote working, teachers sending wraps home with them. We had a lot of teachers that had good internet connection, but they had no way to get back into the resources securely. They may or may not have a VPN. They may or not been able to have access or understood how it to work. So we had a lot of projects where we did remote access points, a simple AP that sits on the teacher's desk and gives them a wired port for that phone. Maybe their desk phone needed to go home with them, and extending the call manager, a VIA system, whatever, out to them. So when a teacher or a parent called the school and was transferred to their phone, they weren't having to remote or go to the school. They were able to just answer their phone like a normal in the classroom kind of thing. There's a lot of different projects that we can do to help start figuring out this COVID response and start understanding the analytics about, okay, I have a student who got sick. Okay, let's look at what we're doing in the cloud. We've given away a lot of free analytics software to understand. I can correlate a person or a device, and I can see all the people they've touched and contacted with. We're about to launch it for free to all our customers and say, hey, these are the people, and based on this device has touched this device, and they were near these people the most, the next round, and the least. So the COVID response team is able to look at it and kind of sit there and understand, hey, I need to contact these 5 people first because their point of contact was 25 plus minutes compared to these other people, and just work my way down the list and understand it. But also understand I've got too many people in the cafeteria. I've got too many people in this one hallway coming into the school. You know, our school security system says we all enter in through 1 or 2 doors. Well, that kind of blows social distancing when we have the buses dropping off 50 kids and there's 5 buses pulling in. They're all going through the same door. So we have to look at that. Okay.
Yeah, and I want to add one more thing to that is that while ERate will not support many of those solutions, the CARES funding, which is again that stimulus fund that passed Congress about 2 months ago, those there's $13.5 billion for K-12, and that funding stream will fund those type of solutions, and we anticipate in the next round of stimulus that again those type of solutions will be able to be supported.
Great. So quick question for you, Peter, in relation to ERate, because, it's always usually done in the building. So for some of these solutions where they might be putting Wi-Fi in other locations, like we talked about, so obviously we talked about the building, so that one would obviously be covered. But if they were going to put it at another location, say community center or something else with something back in to get them to the internet, is there any talk of ERate supporting that kind of solution, considering it's networking and getting the students to the internet?
Great question, and there is a lot of discussion about that. There are members of the FCC Commission that firmly believe that the definition of classroom has to be expanded. If no one is physically in the building, but they're at home or anywhere else, that the legislative intent was that you should be able to utilize ERate to expand for that particular solution or service. However, it is also clear that the Republicans that control the FCC currently, they just don't believe they have the legislative authority. They just don't believe that the specific language in the 1996 Telecommunications Act grants them that authority. So there is potential talk that in this next round of stimulus that there could be some legislative language that provides the FCC with that authority. All to be determined, and we will certainly let you know as things progress or change.
Great, thanks. All right, any other questions from anybody that's still out there? Okay. All right, well, I just wanted to thank everybody for their time today and say that if you have any questions or want to discuss any of these solutions, please feel free to reach out to us at A3 Communications at sales@a3communications.com for email, or you can visit our website at www.a3communications.com. So I appreciate your time
Jason,
today.
I'll share
Yeah.
the recording with you, and if you want, we can send this recording out to everybody that registers, so that way, if folks on your team weren't able to make it, you can share this recording with them.
That would be great. I appreciate that, Courtney.